beginning of our Daf, Mesech Kesuvos Daf Kof Aleph, begins 7 lines down at the top of the Yommi. The Gemara continues with the machlokes from the previous Daf. We had opened up the Mishnah discussing the topic of the women that do not get their Kesubah, and we spoke about one of them was a Katana. Now, generally, Katana, if she leaves, oftentimes is through Mian. She could just leave on her own. Machlokes Rabbi Shloimy was regarding if she gets a get. Then, if that's how she's leaving the marriage, would she get a ksub in that situation or not? That's a machlokes Rabbi Shloimy. The Gemara will begin saying, let's say that machlokes, the marriage of a katana, the minor, is significant at all to get a ksub when she's divorced, is a machlokes tanoim or not. Shiur corresponds to the concept of Mesech to anything Daf Yomi. Today's Daf. Some of the things discussed in today's Daf are regarding nashim she'amar chacham elam ksuba, that they say that they don't get a ksuba. That's the primary mana and masayim, but they are eligible for tesepes ksuba. Whereas regarding nashim she'amar chacham yitzir shalei b'ksuba, that means to say that they don't get not the ksuba, not even the tesepes ksuba, which are different categories of women. The Gemara discusses regarding machlokes Rabbi and Shmuel regarding katana yitzir beget, if she leaves specifically through a get, not through mian, which relates, and the Gemara attempts to relate it to the machlokes Rabbi Lezer and Yeshua regarding the suri katana, if that's considered a marriage at all regarding certain relations between the husband and the wife. Now, however, regarding Amalika and Gadol, which is actually a biblically prohibited marriage, actually there Yeshua Ksuba actually does get a Ksuba, as the Gemara will explain the reason with that. Remember the machlokes regarding Amalika and Gadol Hikaba, but he didn't know this before that she was Namana. Would we say that she gets their Ksuba or not? Ketani Yisayim and this is B'Dakan's Chachamim. Some of the important terms and concepts discussed in today's daf are that a minor orphan, the Chacham instituted that she can have a rabbinic marriage, so that people shouldn't just treat her as she has no owner. And since it's only a Nesud Rabbanan, so she's allowed to just go ahead and leave, which is not the case by a biblical marriage, which requires a get. And that's what the Gemara discusses. So how do we qualify this specific marriage of the Ketan? So beginning of our daf, we had mentioned the Mishnah, a minor who objected to her marriage, Hashniya marriage prohibited Mirabon, and the idleness, a woman who can't have any children, in Ksuba, and they're also not entitled to a Tanai Ksuba, which includes Lepedes, Lemoines, Lebelois, as we said this in the Mishnah. Mendes doesn't get a Ksuba because she lives on her own. Shniya doesn't get a Ksuba because Kanso is Neshi Margalasa, because she doesn't lose anything, so she actually tries to convince him to get married. And Anas doesn't get a Ksuba because it's a Mekachtais, because you're not like a regular woman. Now, Nashim, so the Gemara continues now and says that this machlokes between Rav and Shmuel, which we had a machlokes regarding, the Mishnah said Mendes does not get a ksuba. So Rav said, Katana yaitz beget in the ksuba. Anytime a minor leaves, she doesn't get a ksuba, because if she, even though she divorced with a get, like the words on the Katana came after the Alma. Like Rashi says that it's just like she's just like a mafuta. She just like really she was not married. Just rabbis let this relationship to happen. Shmuel says no. Me'enes is the wording in our Mishnah in ksuba because she leaves on her own. But yetz beget ksuba. A minor divorced with a get isn't having to ksuba because kitana de'keishtai she is like his wife for all things. It's just that the chacham let her leave with me, so therefore she would get a ksuba if she's divorced. So that's the Gemara says on 7 lines down at the top of the Yom. Let's say this machlokes is Rabbi Shmuel. Is a machlokes Tanai, which essentially is asking, do we view this marriage as a bona fide marriage, just like you could leave with Mian, or it's not really a marriage at all, and that's why you could leave with Mian. For Rabbi he says, the relationship with a minor is nothing. Main battle is so therefore the husband doesn't get her findings, doesn't get her earnings, the person cannot nullify her vows, she doesn't inherit, cannot make himself tamitar. The rule of it is as follows. Really, she's not like his wife. It's like, okay, we just wanted to look significant, so we say, okay, when this is over, she just has to do this procedure called me. But really, it was just like mafud de ba'alma. Really, there's nothing going on over here. Rabbi Shloimy says, no, the activities of a minor is significant. Her husband merits in her findings, in her earnings, about personal jam, nullifying her vows, he can inherit her, can make himself a tamitar. The rule of it is like this. She's like his wife from all halachas. Just like that, she could leave with me. So let's say Rab, who says that the Ketana, even if she leaves her to get, does not get a ksuba because he views her as nothing. That seems to be exactly Rabbi Eliezer. The Emais can like look. Ushmuel that says Ketana that leaves her to get yes ksuba is Rabbi Shloimy, who says that my Ketana klum, and therefore the husband gets all those rights. Would seem to line up very well with this machlokes Tanai. Says the Gemara, no. According to him, no one's going to disagree. In other words, this is you're saying that Shmuel has to be like Rabbi Yeshua and not like Rabbi Eliezer. That's correct. Shmuel would agree that according to Rabbi Eliezer, any minor obviously would not get a ksuba. Why? Because, as we're going to explain momentarily, if regarding the husband inheriting her and her mitzias, which is going from heart to him, even there, Eliezer says that the takana de Rabbana did not include the husband getting those rights. For sure, the ksuba, which is going from him to her, because the whole point Takana was trying to convince the man to marry this orphan girl, which is all for the benefit of the girl, as the Gemara says in Yavamis, which it's just we don't want anyone to treat her as a way of hefker, because a little girl doesn't know how to protect herself from being seduced. So we're trying to make incentives to have people marry her. If he holds that he's not going to get all those incentives, for sure she's not getting incentives. But ki peligi Rabbi Yeshua. But however, when do we disagree? The machlekes Rav and Shmuel. This is saying Rav is like Rabbi Eliezer, not like Rabbi Yeshua. That's not true, because Rav could even be saying his teaching even like Rabbi Yeshua, as the Gemara explains. Shmuel is Rabbi Yeshua. That makes sense, because Shmuel says that she would get ksuba, and Rabbi Yeshua also says that Ma'aseh Ketana Klum, and the husband inherits her, and because of mitzvah, so that would line up well. For Rav, how would Rav interpret his opinion even according to Rabbi Yeshua? Say like this. Over there, where we saying that the Ma'aseh Ketana is klum, it's significant. Going from heart to him, for example, inheriting her, getting her earnings, getting her mitzias, which goes to the husband. Oh, of course. You know why we made incentives that he should not hold back from marrying her. The Chachamim were trying to affect that this marriage should happen so that people shouldn't treat her as hefker. So they incentivized it and says, okay, this rabbinic husband is going to get these things. But from him to her. For example, what Rav and Shmuel are disagreeing about regarding ksuba and tonight ksuba, that law that she wouldn't get, and therefore Rav could even be like Rabbi Yeshua. It doesn't have to only be like Rabbi Eliezer. Now he said in the Mishnah that this mema'enes, this shniya, this alnis, there's three types of category of women. The Mishnah we said they don't get the worn out garments. Now, however, the Gemara ends up saying it can't be for them all, because Amalei Rav Huna Bar Chila Rav Kam. He says like this: Amalei Mishmei Shmuel, you said to us in the name of Shmuel, Lo Shana, we didn't learn this halacha the Mishnah, Eli Nichsei Miluk, which Nichsei Miluk is that she brings in properties into the marriage. They don't get evaluated in the ksuba, and the principle is the woman's, so it has nothing to do with the ksuba. It's not like the marital assets. Just the husband gets to utilize the payers. So on that, they told Shmuel they told Rav Kam, you told us in the name of Shmuel that this halacha the Mishnah that the belois, the worn out garments of the woman's property that she brings into the marriage, that these three women, the one who does miyun, or the one who's rabbinically forbidden, or the alnis, that she's not going to get it back, that's only nichsi melug. But nichsi tzoyin barzel. Why does it get the terminology tzoyin barzel? It's talking about sheep that are hard and they last like iron, because the husband accepts all type of responsibilities on it totally, because it gets a value in the ksuba, and it says dona dunya danelis vis-a-vis. This is what she's bringing from her father's household, and he accepts all this insurance to return her exactly as is when she leaves the marriage. That you told us that Islam, that she gets the belois, the worn out garments of the nichsi tzambas. So if that's the case, so the Gemara says, Havi bar Papa. So Papa asks, he says, Aheya. So which one of these three women are you saying that when it comes to the nichse milug, that she is not going to be able to get these belois when she's leaving the marriage? If everything is going on the woman that does miyun, so I understand. If the belois are here, then she should take both the nichse milug and the nichse tzambaz, because we shouldn't penalize her. Why should a woman who's doing miyun, or minor girl, lose out when she's leaving the marriage to take back her properties, which are both nichse milug and nichse tzambaz? They're just evaluated differently. Nichse tzambaz, he's accepting insurance. Nichse milug, not. But what's the difference? Why should she lose out? Why are you telling me that this halacha only mentions regarding nichse milug, but nichse tzambaz she will get maman of shach? If she's regarding case number one, and if it's around, she should take them both. If they're not around them, or meaning they were consumed already, well then idi. Both nichse milug and nichse tzambaz lo yishakla. She shouldn't take it. Why shouldn't she take it? Like Rashi explains, because the husband could say, let's say by nichse tzambaz, says, I use my own, because I married her with permission from the courts to marry her, And Nixon Basil, it's like considered like his. He just has to give it back to her exactly as it is when he divorces her. He says, when I'll divorce her, then I'll give her back what I accepted in Niksuba. But I didn't divorce her. She's just walking out. She's doing min. And even by Nixim Lug, Rashi explains, even though he used it without permission, but even so, he could say, I don't have to give it back to her until I divorce her, and not through me, because she might die in my lifetime and I'll inherit her. So, Mamamshach, if it's around, why shouldn't she get them? And if they're not around, these beloys, so then she shouldn't take either one of them. What's the differentiation between Tzim Barzil and Nixim Lug? So case number one seemingly does not make sense in your qualification of this halacha. Seila islandness. No, when did Shmuel say his teaching? On the second one, on the third one, on the islandness. Well, here also it's difficult. Because if they are around these worn-out garments, idridi shaklish, you should take both of them because he utilized it with his intention, meaning he's divorcing her, and anytime you divorce a woman, it's his choice. He has to give her the things that are hers. You know, so even though he's saying that she doesn't get a ksuba, but why wouldn't she get a proper? Not penalizing her. And meaning ksuba, I'll say she won't get a ksuba because the mega twice. Why shouldn't she get her properties? And either lesson, if they're not around, and because he should never have entertained to think that she's going to be an alnus, and therefore you want to exempt him. But if you're going to come to differentiate, actually says Gemara, you actually should differentiate the other way around. What do you mean? Nichsim milug de bishu sekaimi. Nichsim milug are really always hers. Even during the marriage, he only gets the utility. He's never allowed to wear it out and to wear it. So that isla, that you should say, which as Rashi explains, if you hold that the garment itself is the principle, as we're going to shortly explain, but then that's what she should actually get, is the Nifsi Melug. You told me that the Nifsi Melug is what she's not getting. Nifsi Tzembazal is what she is getting. To the contrary, she should get Nifsi Melug, which is always in her domain, and Nifsi Tzembazal, where he accepted insurance, and he's allowed to use it because it's like totally like his, and he's allowed to wear it out. Oh, the lavish Shusikame, that's not really in her domain. So you say less lie and say, I don't have to give it back. I didn't know you were going to be an islandess, so I'm not responsible. So if anything, the differentiation should be the other way around. Why saying Nixim Maluk, she doesn't, whoever she is, we're trying to figure out which one of these three women, she doesn't, and Nixim Maluk does get. If anything, if it's the case of the islandess, the Tzem Barzil she shouldn't get, and the Nixim Maluk, which are hers, she should get. So says Gemara, no, it's on the middle woman. It's going Ashniya, which they are married in sin, rabbinically, and the reasoning is because of the laws of penalty, and we're talking about where they're not around anymore, so they were used up by the husband. Okay, if it comes to Rabbanan and the rabbis penalize, in other words, you're right, halachically it should be the opposite, like we just said by the case of the Almas. But the Chum inverted it to uproot it from the halacha of a regular marriage to show penalizing each one. So the rabbi penalized Lidida, they penalized her bididei, meaning what she should have gotten from him. And what is that? That's the 100 or the 200 of the ksuba and the mezainis and the belois of nichsei milug, which the husband used without permission, which really he owes her. But since we want to penalize him because you were married in sin, you're not going to get what you're supposed to get from him. And Lididei, they also penalized him what he should get bidida in hers, which are the belois, the one of Nitzitz and Brazil, which he used with permission, which really he's supposed to be able to maintain. No, that you have to give. So it's exactly the inverse, specifically because of the penalty that we want to do. We make each one lose out what they're supposed to get. And that's why she gets Tzem Brazil, and she does not get the Nixim Maluk. I'm going to have Shimi Ba'ashi says, but Shemami no Kahana, one thing we could infer from Rabbi Kahana, which we mentioned in passing, that he says the secondary erva does not get the belois of Nixim Malug. And we said the reason is because the rabbis penalized her from what she really should get from him, but it sounds like a regular woman would get this from the husband, even though it's not around anymore. That is, we learn if Ayla Leglimo, if let's say from her Nixim Malug she brought in a coat, and which was not evaluated in the Nedunya, which is essentially hers, so Karna Haba, that's the principle. And that should be maintained for the woman to be able to sell and to purchase property. And he's Eichel the Peiris, meaning we don't say that the wearing is the Peiris, And therefore, he cannot wear the garment until he gets worn out and it becomes like a shmata. No, the glima is the karen. And therefore we said that really a regular woman would be getting the blois that we used up and were ruined, and she's supposed to get that back. You can't call that the payders. So if you might recall this, in Perak Isha, Daf Ayin Teshuvah, Nachman said pay to hava. He said no, the wearing of the garment, and you could wear it out till it's a shmata, that's utility. So why would a regular husband be responsible to compensate the wife and the next thing to look for that? That's not the canon, that's the payder. So Rav Nachman disagrees, and he holds that the wearing of the garment is its utility, is the payded, and then you can wear it till it becomes a shmata. Whereas here from the halacha of Rav Kahana, we see that he holds that no, the jacket is the jacket. That's the principle. You have to make sure it doesn't get ruined. And a regular woman would get that back if it gets worn out and gets depleted. Whereas here, in the case of the Shnia, she specifically doesn't get that, and she'll only get Nefetz and Braza because we're penalizing him, what he really should be able to hold on to, which is Nefetz and Braza, which he did use with Rishos, but since it was in sin, we do the exact opposite. Now we said in the Mishnah that these three women, Ein Len Ksuba, they don't get a Ksuba. So Amar Shmuley says, we didn't learn this in Lamon Masai. Only it's regarding the 100 or the 200. It's regarding that we said this halacha that they're not going to get the ksuba. But regarding the additions, that these women are going to get because that's a gift that he gives her because of the endearment of the bia that they're going to have. So therefore, that's not considered something that she's going to lose. Similar in the Brisa, the sages that the women that the sages said a terminology of ein len ksuba. That's the wording in our Mishnah. They don't have a ksuba. That wording is kigoyin hamamenes like the case of the girl who walks off and all those of our Mishnah. There, the halacha is ein len mana masam. They don't have the primary ksuba of 100 to 100. That there's nothing. We're not going to take away the addition that he's just gifting because of the endearment of them getting married. However, the sages that the Chachamim said, the women that the sages spoke about, a terminology of, which we have like on Daf Ayin Beis, where if let's say she's violating, they said Yotze Shlei B'Ksuba. They said a terminology of that they leave it out of Ksuba, which that sounds like all the halachas of collection was removed from them. For example, like on Daf Ayin Beis, that if she violates the law, the Jewish law, the Chabad Seha, and all those others mentioned over there, which let's say she's found to have vows or blemishes, or she curses the ones who gave birth to him in front of him, in front of his children. So in Lente Seves, they don't get even the additions, because Shemon Messiah for sure the 100 or 200. Now, if let's say she's being kicked out of the marriage because of a bad name that she was mezana, and it tells Mashal Faneha, she takes what's in front of her, meaning of the Nefsim Elog, and she leaves without a ksuba. It says the Gemara, this last halach is Masayela Rapuna supports Rapuna. When he says Zinsa, if the woman is mezana, where you see that she does not lose, if you continue to the below Seg Hayomin, the worn out garments that are still there, meaning if they're still there, that she doesn't lose. That's what we said, that the woman who's kicked out because she's mezana, she only takes mashal for now. If the blois are still there, if it's kayaman, that she's going to take. However, the Gemara brings a Tani Kamid Rav Nachman. There was someone who taught a brisa in front of Rav Nachman that said Zinsa, if she's mezana, he see the blois like kayaman. She actually does lose out, even her garments that are there in front of her. So Amalei, so Rav Nachman said to him, in his Zinsa, if the woman was mezana, kaleha mizana, did her garments, her garments mezana? Like, why should she lose out her garments? So Tani he says, he said, teach this, lo yafsid below sekayim. No, she does not lose out her garments that she still has of the nisim. Now, however, the Gemara explains, and he says, Zoe, he says, this anonymous brisa that this teacher was teaching in front of Nachman, that she does lose out her beloisa, even if they're kayaman, are divrei Menachem stimta, are the words of Menachem, the anonymous one, meaning we have many of his teachings that are taught anonymously in the Mishnayos and Brises. You're right, but the sages, they disagree. Since if she's mezana, you don't have to amend the Bryce. The Bryce is like Rabbi Nachman, and yes, but the Chacham, they disagree. They say that she does not lose out her blois that are still around, her garments that are her nitzim and log that she gets to take, even though she was mezana. Now, we said in the Mishnah that we said, although one of the three women that does not get iksuba is the Ahamis, but it said if originally he married her for the purpose of being an Ahamis, then yesh iksuba, then she does get a ksuba. Now, when he says, the qualifies that contrast between idleness and almana. Because in the Mishnah we said almana kan gadol, all those biblically prohibited women, they get ksuba because they penalize him because he's margi lasa, because she's going to lose out a lot. So it's him that's inciting the marriage. Now, so the Rav Huna contrast says idleness is a isha ve'ena isha, meaning to say sometimes we treat her like his wife and sometimes not. Whereas almana, widow to a kohen gadol, is isha gemur, is always like a bona fide wife. So the Gemara explains what does that mean. Idleness, isha ve'ena isha, is like a wife but not a wife, is hikerba. If he recognizes, as we just said, this quoting from the Mishnah, he recognizes that she's an idleness, she gets ksuba. Lo hikerba, which was the ratio of our Mishnah, being like ksuba, she doesn't get ksuba. That we know. But the main point that's going to be a machlokes amaram is the next point. Almana, which that was one of the cases in the Mishnah we said that does get ksuba, he says, yeah, Isha Gemur is a bona fide woman, bein hikerba, bein lo hikerba, whether he knew that she was almana, whether he didn't, yes, ksuba, she's going to get ksuba. Yudam, he disagrees, says no. Achazu v'achazu, both idleness and almana, Isha bein Isha is a woman and not a woman. Hikerba, yes, ksuba, if he recognizes this regarding her, then she gets ksuba. Well, hikerba and ksuba, I mean, this is we say to almana, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that she gets ksuba, it was only if he knew that. And they're getting married in sin, but since he's the one that's causing the marriage, so we penalize him and we give her the ksuba. But he didn't know. I didn't know that your almana is married in sin. I would never have married you. Then Rabbi Yehuda holds, not like Rav Huna, that he agrees that our Mishnah that she would not get ksuba. Now, Meisveh, the Gemara asks on Rav Huna, who he does differentiate, and he says, meaning that almana, meaning in almana doesn't differentiate. Almana will always get the ksuba from the following brisa. Knasa b'cheska she came. Let's say someone married her with the presumption that she told him that she is a widow. Then it says she came, and turns out that she's right, that she was a widow. Then yesh ksuba, then she get ksuba. Okay, that would seem to be the obvious case, but the diuk, the inference, hastama. But let's say no one said anything. That would essentially be the case of lahikaba, that he didn't know this about her being almana. It would sound like that ain't lo ksuba, that she would not get ksuba, because you're only saying if she told him and it turns out yeah, then she's going to get it. Turns out if he didn't know, she's not going to get ksuba. That refutes Rav Huna, who said that the almana will always get the ksuba. Says no, don't make the word the diuk hastama in ksuba, but if nothing was said, then she does not get ksuba. Let me rather say, if let's say he married her with the presumption that she's not, meaning she misled him, and she said to him, "Oh, I was never married before. Oh, I came from Texas, and I never married anyone." Turns out that when she came, turns out she really was an almana. Oh, that's really like ksuba. That she doesn't get ksuba. The other extreme, but not in the middle. No one said regarding stomach. So you might say, wait a second. I was stomach. So what are you telling me regarding when it was unspecific, that there was no stipulations, but he didn't know that she really was an almana? You're going to tell me isla that she would get ksuba? That's what Rav Huna holds. But then, if that's the case, I would tell him instead of saying the reisha, the cheska she came, instead of saying the halacha, if he married her with presumption that she is, and turns out that she is almana, v'nimtza she came, that yesh ksuba, she gets ksuba, I should have said a bigger chiddush. Lashmin the stomach, I should have said when nothing was said, and then he finds that she almana. For Koshkin Hom, show the case when she told him. If that's the case, you should have said even there. But moreover, Tani actually learned explicitly not like what you're saying. The Brisa says, "Kanasa b'yadu." If he married her knowing that she's almana, then it's b'yadu, and you know that, and it turns out that yes, she is almana, then yes, she gets ksuba. But Kanasa stam, he marries her unspecific, and ksuba doesn't get ksuba. Says Gemara, shift Rav Huna. You're right. You have to refute Rav Huna. We see clearly that almana is just like the island is. That if he doesn't know and turns out as a mekef tais, that she's not going to get ksuba. The Gemara just explained, Rav Huna, where did he make this mistake? He said our Mishnah's wording misled him because he thought from the fact that there's a differentiation regarding the islanders, that the Mishnah mentions this idea that if initially he married her and he knew she was an islandess, she's getting ksuba, and the Mishnah does not say this differentiation regarding the case almana. Oh, machlal, the inference is, yeah, the almana from the stama, that by the almana, even if it's not said, nami isla, she would also get the ksuba, because why didn't you say that this differentiation? Says the Gemara, but that's not the case. Kiktani la almana, when did we say this halacha of the almana that she gets the ksuba is a plukta the alnas kai? Meaning, after we differentiate by the alnas, we explain, and we said that only if he knows this about her, she gets the ksuba. That's when we learned the case of almana near it, and we said that so too in almana is also the same qualification. That only if he knew this and he married her to be an almana, then she get ksuba. But if he did not know, if he married her stam, then the almana is also getting the same criterion, although we didn't mention it, as the almas, and therefore if you didn't know, you're not going to get the ksuba. So therefore almana and almas are the same, like Rabbi Yehuda said, not like that of Rabbi Hanalach almana says, which I'll turn to the 11th parak, and said ksuba's parak almana zaynis, and with that we begin the 12th parak hanleisa isha, continuing on the themes regarding the woman getting married, her ksuba and all the other tnoi ksuba too. Says the Mishnah, hanleisa isha. Someone marries a woman, and she made up with him that she doesn't have I'm getting married to only look. I have your stepdaughter, my daughter from previous marriage. That if you feed my daughter chamasham for a period of 5 years, then I'll get married. So that's what they made up. He has to feed her for 5 years. Now let's say the mother gets married after the first one divorces her. So that marriage didn't last so long. She gets married la'achar to someone else. And now she makes it with him also. And only if he's going to feed her daughter for 5 years. So he also has to feed her for 5 years. And now the first guy cannot say, okay, look, when she comes to me, I'll feed her. In other words, if I would have stayed married to her mother, I would feed her. But our marriage lasted 6 months, and now she got married to the second guy. No, he's not say that. The first husband, which is really her second husband, she had a daughter from a different marriage, and now she married Reuben, and she made up with him for 5 years. And then she married Shimon, also 5 years. Shimon has to feed him for 5 years, and Reuben made it for 5 years. The marriage only lasted 6 months. He has to send the food for 5 years to where the daughter is. He made up the feed her for 5 years, and he can't say, well, that was only when she would be with me. No, he has to feed 5 years.
They split?
Oh, no, so he goes even more. No split. Now, they both cannot say, look, look, we both made up the feed for 5 years. We'll chip in. We'll together. No. One has to feed her, and one has to give her the money of how much the meals would be. Now, it goes even one step further. This is if the daughter gets married. So we know the husband has to feed her. Now the two previous stepfathers have to send her the meals worth of 5 years worth of food. So she's getting triple meals, just she's getting one meal and two of the monetary.
Wouldn't it be stipulated on the marriage?
So the Gemara Mishnah is going to end like that. But if it's not stipulated, then no. Now, Mesu, if these stepfathers die, so actually what's interesting is B'nai their own daughters, they can only get fed from the father's available properties and not from Mishnah because the Mishnah teaches said it's good enough from age. You cannot collect for the eating of Paris or Shvach Chagoyt or Mazn Isha or the Banais, which you can't talk from the Chazon because of Tikkun Olam. No one's going to buy property because no one's going to know how much the daughters are going to get fed for. That's only from the Chazon Mechayim. But this girl, the stepdaughter, she gets fed from the collateral because she's like a creditor because she has a documentation of mezainis for her 5 years. So she actually gets the stepdaughter is going to get preferential treatment. She's going to collect from the chasam shabbat because she's like a balas. Now, in the smart man, they would write, only yes, I'll feed your daughter for 5 years, as long as you are with me. Not if I die or you die or I divorce you. That's the smart people. Not everyone has the fifth chaylik of Shulchan Aruch. Now, regarding the halacha and the Mishnah, which we're actually going to do on the beginning of the next daf, the Gemara introduced the following teaching. Someone says to his friend, look, I owe you $100. Rabbi Shloimy says he owes it to him. Shlokker says he doesn't owe it to him. So the Gemara says, what's the case talking about? What's the question? If he said to those who are listening, you're my witnesses, that I just admitted to him. So my time Rish Lakish the kapata. Of course, what would be the reason Rish Lakish would be exempt? We learned the Mishnah said until you tell those around that in front of us he admitted. Obviously, we see that if he admitted in front of witnesses, he's going to be chayiv. And if he did not tell to those who are listening, you're my witnesses. So my time Rish Lakish what's the reason we hold that you're chayiv? But we hold in the Gemara Sanhedrin. You have to say you're my witness. You can't just say I owe you $100. So what's this case talking about? That's machlik Rish Lakish. Says the truth is he didn't tell those around him, you're my witnesses. So how do we understand the halacha of Rabbi Yechanan that you're going to be chayiv? Meaning, he gave him over a document in front of us. On the document is written, I owe you $100. Now, although it's his handwriting, but since he didn't sign, that's where Shlokker holds you're going to be patur. Because although Mishnah teaches on that if someone produces someone's handwriting that he owes him, you could collect from the chasam nechayrin. That's where he actually signed on it, and he says, "Me, I borrowed from that person $100. Like you're obvious in the Gemara over there, Rabbi said that you should write your signature on the shard, not on the Megillah. Why? Because someone might find it and you might use it. That's where you signed it. But over here we're talking about where he just wrote it for him. I owe you $100 and he did not sign. That's the machlekes. So Yechidam says chayving mechayv alma milsa d'shtada. Obviously, we see that he holds that an element of a document, since he gave it over to him in front of witnesses, command the amu. It's as if he's saying to them, "Atam edam dami," that you are my witnesses, even though he didn't sign them, just by giving it over in front of witnesses. Shlakish Amapata says no, you can be exempt because lo'ilim milsa d'shtada. It's not so strong this halacha of the documentation. And therefore, the fact that you didn't say Atam Edai would preclude it from becoming a halacha of being able to make a person chayiv. You have to say Atam Edai, and the fact that it's a shtar wouldn't make it any better. Thank you for any time for hosting us.